Today we're going to begin the first lesson in Module 2, which will be the third and fourth weeks in the class. And it will cover chapters 4 and 5 about relationships, and then we'll add some information about graphic illustrations next week, which is not in your book, but which will be provided to you next week in Blackboard. So today we're going to talk about transitions and patterns of relationship. Here are the key terms for the module for weeks 3 and 4 that you're going to need to know before test 2. And here are all the transitions and patterns of organization that we're going to be looking at this week. So you'll need to be able to identify these and know what they mean. And then next week we're going to get to all of these fun things. I remember math. It was always a relief when we got to this kind of stuff. Bar graphs, pie charts, tables, maps, line charts. Anyway, it'll be fun and just an interesting way of being able to put the information into a form that helps you see what the author is really trying to get at. But today we're going to start with the transitions and also the patterns of kind of just the way that the information is presented in a pattern. And these are important because it helps us understand what the author is really trying to get at, what their point is, and what we should be looking for, what our brain should be looking for as we're going through and reading a passage. So it really is important to pick this apart and be able to see what's going on. So the first ones we'll look at are chapter 4. If you haven't read chapter 4 yet, I do always suggest that you run through the chapters first and then watch this and then do the work is the best way to go about it. We're going to look at transitions of addition. Sometimes we have a list of items and we'll use transitions, which are words and phrases, and also transitions of time or sequence. Okay, and the transitions are actual words and phrases, and the patterns are just patterns of presenting information. But sometimes the transitions that are used kind of give us a clue as to what those patterns are. And we're going to look at a pattern of illustration or example, and that's broken up into two parts, two different ways, is definition and example. But also, and not in your book, is this one. It's not generation. It should be generalization and example pattern. Generalization and example pattern. I'll make sure I have that right later on. And then we have comparison and contrast, cause and effect, and problem and solution. Problem and solution in chapter 5. All right, transitions and patterns, it's about connections, the way information is corrected to get together. Now, transitions, they build bridges between sentences, between the ideas in each sentence, the relationship between them. And patterns of organization show relationships between the supporting details in the paragraphs and the chapters. And transitions also are signal words. You look for them and you say, oh, they're showing me, they're adding more information, or they're showing a difference from something that they've said before. Or maybe they're presenting some answers to a problem that they presented, which is the topic. So I think it's going to help you identify the major and minor supporting details in a passage. Okay, this is from your book, and you'll recognize it if you've read chapter 4, is transitions are words or phrases like moreover that show relationships between ideas. And I like this sentence. They are like signs on the road that guide travelers. And they can also be seen as a bridge, carrying the reader from one idea to the next idea that's presented. Okay, here's an example of a transition in the middle of a word. Most people choose a partner about as attractive as themselves. Moreover, personality and intelligence affect their choice. And you can see here, moreover, used as a bridge. So you've got one idea, and that's people look at other people's attractiveness when they are choosing a partner or choosing someone to date or to marry. And then moreover means that we're adding, it's a transition of addition. We're adding more categories that people look at. Personality and intelligence also affect their choices. So we're adding more information. All right, here are the different relationships, and we've got listed here where you can find lists of transitions. And this is really important. I would write this down in a notebook so you could find this again, put sticky notes on these pages in your textbook, and go back to them over and over again. So you're going to see addition, the time and sequence things, words and transitions, illustration or example. Now, the definition and example doesn't have a list of transitions because it is just a pattern. But if you can see, if you're going to be using an example, you're going to be using the same kind of transitions you see in the illustration here. Then we've got comparison and contrast, cause and effect, and problem and solution. And that does not have a list of transitions, but they'll use the same transitions as cause and effect. And you'll see that that's kind of the same setup of information. Now let's look at some of these. You have seen this in your book as well. Okay. In this cartoon, let's read the cartoon first. You are a good employee, Ralph. First, you're well-rounded. Also, you keep a cool head. And last, you don't spend time in the break room drinking coffee. So I've circled the transitions here. First, also, and last. Okay, and you can see here that we are adding more information every time. We're adding another reason that Ralph is considered to be a good employee. So this relationship and the transitions that you see here is of addition. Okay, let's look at this other bird cartoon from your book. I can't believe how fast this has happened. First, we met 6 months ago. Then we moved in together. Next, we built a nest. And now we're starting a family. So here are the transitions circled, first, then, and next, indicating the different stages of these birds' relationships. I don't know, during this time, I've been spending a lot of time watching this happen, and it's been a lot of fun. Here is the pattern we're looking at, time or sequence. It's a sequence of events or something that happens within time. All right, so let's look at some actual passages here. Athens Technical College offers a variety of course delivery options. For instance, many courses are offered in the traditional face-to-face format, don't we wish? Another example is the offering of hybrid classes, which are partially online and partially face-to-face. A final delivery option is the completely online course. Now, you have to look at what kind of words in here are going to point out to you what is the relationship we're looking at. You should have picked up on, for instance, another, a final delivery. We are looking at generalization and example pattern here. And look at this, it offers a variety of course delivery options. So this is something that often writers use in, if you're taking 1101 or 0989, your beginning writing courses. This is an easy way to write it. You have a very general category here, and then you're going to give examples of it. So a general category and examples. Let's look at another one. My sister and I are very much alike. We are both fairly short and have dark hair. Moreover, we have degrees in nursing and work at the same hospital. Finally, we are married but without children. What pattern do you see here? What words are going to stick out? Okay, we do have moreover and finally, but these are transitions of addition, and they don't necessarily tell us what the relationship pattern is we're looking at. But we do see things. My sister and I are very much alike. Now, this is the main idea of the whole little tiny paragraph here, but we see alike, both, we have, we are. Okay, the comparison going on here, a comparison, and we end up with similarities. There we go. Now there could be a contrast. If she talked about how she and her sister are different, we'd have a contrast going on. We'll look at that a little later too. Right? Here's the next one. Traveling by train is much different than traveling by plane. To begin with, train travel typically takes a much longer time to cover the same distance as an airplane. Unlike with most airplanes, you can pay extra for a bed and private room on a train. Perhaps the greatest difference is the limitations of train schedules as opposed to the number of flights offered on any given day. All right, what words are we looking at? I'm going to give you a second to just look at those. And feel free to pause the video and just reread this before you go on and make some predictions of your own. All right. So we're going to look at some words of contrast here. Much different, much longer, unlike, differences. So we're looking at two things and we're comparing them and say, how are they different? So this is a little passage that has showing a contrast, but there can be a comparison and contrast. Like before, we were talking about the two sisters, they were compared and they were the same. Here they're contrasted to see what's different. Now, sometimes in a passage, you will have both comparison and contrast. What is the same and what is different. So we would call that comparison and contrast pattern. Here's one more. Student issues with school attendance can be caused by a number of different factors. For one thing, students may have issues with transportation, which can make getting to classes more difficult. A far more common reason for missing class, however, is work. Lots of students have jobs that require them to fill in when someone is called in sick or taken vacation days. Finally, a personal or family illness is yet another factor causing students to miss class, especially if the student is a parent to young children. Right, we're going to look for, we've looked at, here's something for one thing, a far more common. Let me go to the next one. Look at this word too, caused by, can make. We also have this, require, something is making them do something. And another factor. What pattern do you think that we're looking at here? And here's the clue, caused by. We're looking at cause and effect. Do you see that? Here in the first sentence, student issues with school attendance can be caused by a number of different factors. So the main topic is student issues with school attendance. You'd say the overall topic, but what they're saying about it, the main idea is what causes that, what causes students to miss class. Okay, and some of them focus on the cause and some focus on the effect. So this is the causes, but if we had an effect, you might say student issues with or problems with school attendance has many different effects on a student's education. So then we would look at the things, the results or the consequences of often missing class and what effect that has. There are many resources one might consult when trying to decide which movie to watch. You might begin by consulting a list of new releases. Alternatively, some people keep a list of movies with their friends, movies their friends talk about that they've never seen. If you or someone you know has such a list, you might review it. Personally, I like to find curated lists compiled by podcasters, directors, and authors who I enjoy and whose tastes are similar to my own. So what pattern are we looking at here? Let's look for the main idea. There are many resources one might consult when trying to decide which movie to watch. As usual, when in doubt about the main idea, first look at the first sentence, and that's what we're going to look at here. Let's look at some of the words that might pop out to you. Many resources. Okay, you might begin, so here's one suggestion. Alternatively, here's another suggestion. Personally, there's another suggestion. So here's a list of suggestions they're giving. You can see it's a problem and a list of solutions. Problem, what movie are we going to watch? Solution, here are different things you can look at. All right, here are some helpful tips. There are some helpful tips on page 144 of your textbook. Mark that and look at those, especially before you go on to the next week. But I'm going to give you some more tips right here. Okay. A paragraph's main idea will often, but not always, clue readers into the pattern of organization. Excuse the typo there. So a paragraph's main idea will often, but not always, clue readers into the pattern of organization, just like it did in this last one we looked at. Okay, there are many resources. You know there's going to be a list of resources, a list of solutions to that problem. But let's look at a sentence here. Here's a main idea sentence. There are many similarities between taking classes online and taking classes in a traditional classroom. Well, what kind of information do you expect there? What kind of relationship? You're expecting a list, aren't you? And how things are the same, a list of how classes online and classes in the classroom are the same. Okay. So it is a comparison of how they are the same. Here's another main idea. Driving while under the influence can have a number of devastating consequences. Well, we're going to look at the word consequences, aren't we? And that will say it's going to be a cause and effect. The cause will be driving under the influence, and we're going to look for a list of effects here. It's another tip. Some paragraphs use more than one pattern organization, and that is sometimes a mixed pattern. So you need to look at an example of that carefully on page 202 of your textbook. And finally, familiarizing yourself with those lists provided in Chapter 4 and 5 will help you identify the type of transitions and the patterns more easily. So I would, again, mark those and go back and look at them often. Read through them once a day if you can. And there's not only going to help you identify the pattern, but they're also going to help you with those questions. What are the major supporting points? What are the minor supporting points? They'll help you point them out and be able to list them or put them in an outline or a graphic organizer that we're going to look at next week. All right, well, if you have any problems with doing the activities or questions about transitions and patterns of relationship, please get in touch with me and I will try and help you as much as I can. Have a good week.